I think she hates him.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so we can all
That's a
agree on
given.
that. That's a given. I also think that she wants to take him out. She does not want to be the first lady anymore.
They agree with you.
Economists have made clear that he's going to increase the debt by $7.75 trillion. I'm worried about mass deportation and internment camps, and I'm also worried about Elon Musk warning Americans to prepare for temporary hardship.
Don't be rude.
Over the years, she's perfected the art of slapping away his hand, ripping her hand out of his grip, and just flat out walking away from him during photo ops.
Sunny Hostin looked straight into the camera on The View and said the part everyone else was tiptoeing around about Melania and the marriage. She did not whisper, she did not hedge, she just laid out what the public had been watching for years and translated it into plain English. Melania's carefully timed statements, the strategic absences, the selective appearances, the on-brand cool when the house is on fire. Sunny said what that looks like from the cheap seats. It looks like a marriage that is not rowing in the same direction.
He would be held criminally responsible because no one is above the law. He would be at the very least charged. He not only has the New York case, he has the Georgia case, he has the Department of Justice cases. There are 2 or 3 of them there. I mean, you can't commit so many crimes and think that you are above the law, even if you are the president.
So it really is a celebration of the law.
It's a celebration of the law and how it applies to all of us.
And the second that aired, Trump went nuts. Not annoyed, not defensive, full siren. He ranted about the show, he lobbed insults at the panel, he tried to bury the message by bulldozing the messenger. The more he yelled, the more he underlined why the moment mattered. Because when a daytime segment forces you to explain your own marriage to your own voters, you have already lost the optics round.
She said yesterday she has no regrets. Did you see that? You'll see it in just about 2 seconds. Go ahead, put it on.
Well, if anything, would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind in terms of, and I've been a part of most of the decisions that have had impact.
I think the other one asking the question is dumber than Kamala, so that's like, she's a dummy. I watched her over the years. That is one dumb woman. Sorry.
Well, we're going to tell you everything in this video, but before we move further, please make sure to like this video and subscribe because that helps us making more such explaining documentary. Here is why Sunny's take hit like a gavel. Melania had just stepped out with a position that slices straight into the heart of Trump's pitch to his base. She publicly signaled support for abortion rights at a time when his party was using the issue like a litmus test. That is not a neutral gesture. That is the spouse of the candidate saying out loud that women should make their own choices while the candidate keeps promising the opposite. Sunny did not claim secret knowledge. She followed the math.
Critics are going hard after a liberal media member for vile comments about Melania Trump. The former First Lady appears to signal her support for reproductive rights in a video out yesterday.
Individual freedom is a fundamental principle that I safeguard. Without a doubt, there is no room for compromise when it comes to this essential right that all women possess from birth: individual freedom. What does my body, my choice really mean?
And this take is pretty shocking.
I think she hates him.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Okay, so we can all
That's a
agree on
given.
that. That's a given. I also think that she wants to take him out.
If your brand is built on controlling the story and your spouse jumps into the story on the side of personal freedom, you have a problem that a rally microphone cannot fix. You can call The View names, you can call Sunny names, you cannot undo the image of the person closest to you pulling the rug under your message when suburban voters are already slipping away. The reason the line about the marriage landed is that it came with years of B-roll the audience had already filed away in memory.
We have to remember that Trump is the guy who ushered in the era of fake news. He is the guy who ushered in alternative facts. He is the guy who attacked 3 black female journalists. He's the guy that revoked Jim Acosta's press credentials for asking him a question. And so I think that this president-elect, I hate to say it, would like nothing more than to have only Fox News cover him, would like nothing more than a state-sponsored media. And I don't think he can be trusted in the way that other presidents can be trusted. This is an aberration.
But the reality is he doesn't just have Fox News. He didn't do a lot of mainstream media this election, but he went on Joe Rogan and reached 50 million people.
People remember Melania's anti-bullying pitch that rolled out with soft lighting, while Trump was blasting enemies of the day on social media like it was a hobby. People remember the trip to a Texas facility where children were the point, and the jacket that said it did not care, which turned the whole visit into a billboard for indifference. People remember the convention speech that tracked another First Lady's language so closely you could play the clips and hear the rhyme.
That jacket was really the first representation of Melania going on her own in her office saying, it's just a jacket. It's anything but just a jacket.
So in other words, just so I understand this, that was an attention-grabbing stunt that she intentionally did because she knew it would get the press's attention.
Right, and I don't think she realized that it would get the negative attention.
How could she not know that a jacket that says she doesn't care as she goes to see children wouldn't get
Because
negative?
the interpretation that I took from it, again, just from someone knowing her, was, oh my God, Melania, why didn't your office just come out and say, I don't care what liberals say, I don't care what conservatives say, I don't care what anybody says. I'm doing the right thing and I'm going to the border. That's the messaging, because I do think deep in her heart, that was there, but it got so convoluted and nobody communicates, nobody really cares to help her cover. What's entirely wrong. Doesn't matter. The reality is she wore it to get attention. How I perceived it was because of how I viewed her as a friend.
People remember the body language that did not match the captions, like that tarmac clip where a hand reached out and a hand pulled away. Tiny little gestures that speak louder than press statements. None of that was rumor. All of it aired. So when Sunny framed the marriage as detached, tactical, even oppositional at critical moments, viewers did not need a lecture. They had a mental highlight reel ready to go. Trump's response was the tell. He did not counter with evidence. He did not calmly make the case that his spouse stands with him on the issues he says define the election.
Everyone wants, the subsidies to continue. They want the Affordable Care Act to continue. And the reason I think that Mike Johnson is not holding session is because Donald Trump wants to screw up Obama's legacy. This is all about Donald Trump being the small, petty man that he is, and he doesn't want Obama to have that legacy. But what I will say is I think what will change things is when Americans will really start feeling this shutdown, because at this point, as you mentioned, there are all these workarounds being done, but the most at-risk Americans are going to suffer from these layoffs. School children, low-income families, homeless, unhoused people, and senior citizens. At the CDC, I hope everybody knows, more than half of the dismissals were although they were reversed.
He did what he always does when a woman punctures his image on live television. He threw a tantrum and hoped the volume would fog the lens. The problem for him is that yelling at The View is like yelling at the weather. The show is baked into American living rooms. Clips travel. Moms and aunties in office kitchens pass them around without asking permission from campaign war rooms. When Sunny said Melania's move undercut him, the audience did not ask for footnotes. They nodded because they had felt the distance for years, and they had watched him rage at women for years. The match clicked. The fuse was already there.
What I want to mention is that the reason that this is a partisan issue is because Trump made it a partisan issue. Trump politicized the virus in ways that I don't think any of us would have imagined. I mean, he politicized wearing masks. He, doled out resources according to red states and blue states. And, I just read this morning that Walgreens says up to 80% of its staff of some long-term care facilities declined COVID-19 vaccines. And that is because people are scared because of President Trump. I mean, just this morning, I saw that ex-GOP pollster Frank Luntz, right after Joe Biden's inauguration, basically held this focus group evenly split between Biden supporters and Trump supporters to talk about unity and hope. And one woman from Texas said that COVID was a hoax.
Let's talk about that distance because it is the spine of Sunny's argument. Melania has always curated a public image that floats 2 inches above the battlefield. Few interviews, fewer answers, long periods of absence followed by tightly produced cameos. It reads as privacy until the contradictions pile up. You cannot sell kindness while your partner weaponizes cruelty and then declare yourself allergic to the fallout.
I want to be the first
lady. She destroyed the Rose Garden. Who hates Christmas? Melania Trump hates Christmas. She doesn't want to decorate for Christmas. She doesn't want anything to do with him. She doesn't want to sleep in the same room with him. She can't tolerate him.
Allegedly.
And she does.
Yeah, how do you know all this?
Yeah, I don't know.
You don't know all this.
Allegedly. That's why I say allegedly.
You cannot sell integrity at a convention and have the most memorable thing about your words be how closely they trace someone else's. You cannot market maternal empathy while treating a visit with children in crisis like an opportunity for a fashion message that says you do not care. After years of those choices, silence stops reading as grace. It reads as evasion. It reads as a brand protecting itself while the public pays the price for the policies and the rhetoric that come out of the same household.
I think they just need to get out of the Republicans' way because the Republicans are damaging this country so much so that I think Trump voters are realizing they were lied to. Chris Murphy actually said Trump voters are starting to turn on him because they took him seriously when he said he would lower costs and didn't take him seriously when he said he'd act like a dictator. And now they are realizing the opposite is true. So I think people are feeling it. That's why you're seeing thousands and thousands of people with their hands off demonstrations all over the country. I think you are seeing some Democratic leaders. I saw Cory Booker, who was just outstanding when he did his 25-hour talk on the stage. But he was also with Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, and they were sitting on the steps of the Capitol, and they were talking to people. They were talking to the people about budgets and about things that we call them kitchen table issues. Right. And so they're doing things in innovative ways, and I think that's going to continue. And I really think now that people are feeling it, they're going to become much more involved.
Sunny connected that pattern to a single week where Melania signaled daylight on abortion at the exact moment Trump needed unity more than oxygen. That is the kind of move that is either a conscience or a calculation, and either way, it rattles the campaign. If it is conscience, then the campaign has to explain why the person who knows him best cannot co-sign the promise he keeps making about controlling women's bodies.
We spoke about it, and I said, you have to write what you believe. I'm not going to tell you what to do. You have to write what you believe.
Tammy.
She's her own person. I think that's been clear. I also argue constantly, considering my background on the left and with the National Organization for Women, that there is no real choice when you are economically disadvantaged, when you're on the margins, is that choice only comes in when there's a surprise and you can think and say, I can do this, as opposed to I can't do this. So this goes also to reproductive real freedom. It's not freedom when you do it. 70% of abortions, by the way, happen because of an economic problem or because of pressure from the outside. But if you have the money and you can say, I can do this.
If it is calculation, then the campaign has to explain whether the marriage is a series of negotiations and optics plays that will always tilt towards self-preservation first. Trump chose neither explanation. He chose insult, which is how you know he had nothing better. Here is where I want you in the edit. If there was one moment when you decided this marriage on camera does not resemble a partnership off camera, what was it? The jacket.
During Donald Trump's acceptance speech at the Republican National Convention, where he officially snagged the Republican nomination for the 2024 presidential race, Melania Trump was caught on camera doing what she does best, sidestepping a kiss from her husband. Yep, she just casually dodged it like she was avoiding a bad case of morning breath. Well, it's these little moments that keep us all on the edge of our seats, wondering what's really going on behind those closed doors.
Whether you love me or hate me, you gotta vote for me.
But wait, there's more. This isn't the first time Melania's body language has stolen the show. Remember that World Series game? The one where she smiled sweetly next to Donald for all of 2 seconds before turning away and rolling her eyes as if she was thinking, ugh, not again? That clip went viral faster than you could say, awkward marriage, with critics quick to point out that Melania has a knack for these less than warm interactions with her hubby.
The months off the trail while the legal chaos was boiling, the tarmac clip, the polished appearances that say absolutely nothing about the blast radius of the rhetoric, drop it. This is how we keep the timeline honest. And while you are here, if you are watching on YouTube, subscribe, because we do not just react to clips, we connect them into a story that makes sense without spin.
I saw reality TV being produced, and I don't think that's the place for the State of the Union. And I saw him touting his accomplishments with the black community, and I was offended by the fact that he was trying to use a Tuskegee Airman as a prop, as a political prop. Like, I didn't like it. And I think when you think about this administration and what it has allegedly done for the black community, you have to think that in the federal judges that he has appointed, they've been 90% white. He has gutted the Civil Rights Division at the Department of Justice. He has gutted the EPA agency, which has protected black communities from plagues like Flint, Michigan. So don't tell me what you've done for the black community, because you haven't done anything for the black community.
I just...
My question is, do you think...
There's another piece Sunny understands that drives Trump crazy. Daytime television is not a courtroom. It is not a rally. It is a conversation that invites the audience to say what the panel just said out loud at work or at dinner. And once that happens, the narrative sticks. You can refute a report. You cannot refute a vibe that people already felt about a marriage that has always looked like two people running separate brands under the same roof.
I've been saying this from the very beginning, that you really can't have unity without truth and accountability. I mean, if you look at any truth and reconciliation commission all around the world, you have a commission, you get the truth out, you study the facts, and then you have accountability and then unity. And so I certainly think it's the appropriate thing to have this trial and hopefully a conviction, because I think there's no question that former President Trump needs to be held accountable for the insurrection at our Capitol. But I do think that this is an important issue for Republicans to decide. Is it going to be just the Republican Party, or will you hear about this third party, the MAGA Party or the Patriot Party? My understanding is that former President Trump is looking to start this Patriot Party, and a recent Washington Post ABC News poll found that 6 in 10 Republicans believe the party should follow Trump's leadership going forward rather than charting a new path. And I think if that is true, 6 in 10 Republicans, then there really is no other choice than to form a new party, and then perhaps the true Republican conservatives will remain in the Republican Party.
The second Melania's abortion position became public, and Sunny framed it as a deliberate undercut. The split in the brand snapped into focus. It is one thing for critics to say you are controlling and cruel. It is another thing for your spouse to plant a flag on the side of bodily autonomy while you claim the opposite as a moral crusade. That is not noise. That is the heart of the message fracturing in front of the very voters you need.
This is just actually what would be more fake news from the Trump administration, trying to distract and deflect from his woefully inadequate response to the coronavirus. We have over 40,000 Americans now dead because of his woefully inadequate response. My question is, why are you blocking legal immigrants? Legal immigrants, those are the folks that play by the rules. Those are the folks that wait, years and years to get their status, their legal status. This is the other thing that people need to know about this fake news coming from the Trump administration. What he didn't do was, he had so many exceptions to this. He didn't exclude migrant farm workers. He didn't exclude healthcare workers. So what's very interesting is the U.S. eased requirements for immigrants to get certain jobs, such as farm workers, landscapers, crab pickers, people that fill our grocery stores, because he knows that we rely on immigrants to help this economy and to, help us stay alive, our economy alive. So this is, again, just sort of this bait and switch stuff coming from the Trump administration. People really need to look at the underlying facts when you're hearing this misinformation coming from Trump.
Of course, the rumor machine tried to warp the moment, because that is how this ecosystem works. Made up suits, fake victories, wild headlines that never happened. It always spikes right after a clean hit, because bad actors would rather flood the feed than let the original point breathe. But none of the noise changed the clip that started it. Sunny said what the country already suspected. Melania is not just distant. She is carving out her own positions in ways that make Trump look smaller.
That the Republican Party would choose as a candidate and support a candidate who is an insurrectionist, who is an election denier, who is someone who is twice impeached, 34-time convicted felon, someone who has been accused of alleged sexual misconduct by 26 women, found liable for sexual abuse. What is wrong with this country that they would choose a message of divisiveness, of xenophobia, of racism, of misogyny over a message of inclusiveness, a message for the people, by the people, of the people? That's what the problem is.
He proved the point by treating a TV panel like a national emergency, hurling schoolyard insults at women who were doing what he hates most, naming the obvious. If you pull back, the story looks even worse for him. He has built his campaign around the idea that he alone decides who deserves rights and who does not. He alone decides what is strong and what is weak. He alone decides who is a real American and who is a problem to be managed. If the person who shares his last name steps into the frame and says on the most emotionally charged issue of the cycle that women should decide for themselves, the whole Strongman Act crumples.
Don't believe Trump.
Yeah.
And what he said is that Trump has never really wanted to be president. He actually has always wanted to be king. And he also says that his plan this time is to first play king on television. And if we believe he is already king, we will be likelier to let him govern as a king. So don't believe him, because right now what we're seeing is he's waving his scepter, his king scepter. Yeah. Congestion pricing is gone.
Right.
He's waving his scepter.
Although I'm pro-congestion pricing being gone, and Whoopi would agree with me.
Well, I don't know. I feel like my drive-in has been a little bit easier and smoother. But, he's waving the scepter around, and people seem to think that things are happening by executive order. And I think that is his plan. He wants to run for a third term.
Well, frankly, I think...
So here's the takeaway. Sunny Hostin did not invent a scandal. She named a pattern. She held up a mirror to a marriage that has been staged as a state secret and asked the most basic question in politics. Who are you with? Melania answered in her own way by stepping out on an issue that splits the map. Trump answered in his usual way by attacking the woman who said it out loud. The audience answered by keeping the clip in circulation long after the show ended. That is how narrative wins in 2025. Not with a press conference, but with a sentence that fits in your head and refuses to leave. If you are watching on Instagram, please follow. If you are watching on YouTube, please subscribe to America Facticity for more breaking news.